Can everyone hear me? Great, awesome. Thank you so much for making time in your day to meet with us virtually. We've been absent for a couple of months, but we are now back in action, far apart, but definitely close in mind. So a lot has happened, obviously, since the last time we got together. The world is falling apart, but we are slowly putting it back together. As economic developers, that is what we do. We put things back together and make it better than they were before. And we've had a lot of changes at AAUD, and so I just kind of wanted to quick catch you up on those. Ellen Curtin was our wonderful chair, and she is now our past chair, and I'm your new chair. Margie Adler is our co-chair, and AAUD also has a new executive director, Carrie Kelly. You'll be hearing from her in a little bit. I wanted to kind of hit you right up with our next luncheon, which is going to be educational theme, and we'll have a presentation by Kathy Prather from JTED, and hopefully also have a virtual tour of their wonderful new building. We are looking for sponsors for that luncheon, which will take place September 23rd. So if you are interested, please feel free to contact me or Carrie Kelly. And we look forward to you all joining us on September 23rd as well. And now we'll get a few words from Carrie. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. I've met quite a few of you, but I think there are some that I haven't met. I am the new executive director for AAD. I started in April, and as I'm sure you're probably well aware, it's sort of a weird time to start a new job. So I think I've met about 10 AAD members in person, and the rest I've met virtually. It's interesting because we are shifting now to a more virtual format, but it's really awesome as an organization and a statewide organization that everybody's up on Zoom and GoToMeeting and all these different virtual ways to connect. That sort of opens us up to do a lot more things in order to connect as a statewide organization. So I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited to meet everybody in person eventually. But right now it looks like we're gonna keep most things virtual until things become a little safer. Southern Committee sounds like you've done a lot of really interesting and great things. I'm really excited for this event and certainly for the next one that you have planned. And hopefully toward the end of the year, beginning of the next, we'll be able to meet in person again. So thank you everybody for being here, and I'll turn it back over to Camilla.
Great, thanks Carrie. So thanks again for joining us. Today we have an update from Sun Corridor, Inc. They'll provide a little bit of information on how they've pivoted since COVID, things that are on their hot list, and just general tips and information and how we can continue to support them in their economic development efforts. I would like to thank our sponsors for the day. EEC, Ryan Stuckey, thank you so much. Barker, Alice Templeton, thank you. And the town of Marana. I don't see Keith on here, but thank you so much for your continued sponsorship. We really appreciate it. So Susan Hyatt will be our presenter. She'll present for about 30 minutes and then we'll have Q&A. I ask that you please put your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen, and then we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. If you have any sort of like massive emergency that you need to address, just put it in the Q&A, and maybe the panelists can kind of take a quick look. And now without further ado, thank you so much, Susan, for being with us here today, and we look forward to your presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Yep. All right, great. So I just want to reiterate a couple of things. First, I also want to thank the sponsors. I know this is a non-traditional way to do a sponsorship via webinar, and I know that we would all prefer to be meeting in person at the Arizona Inn. I'm thrilled as many people joined today as did, because I know that the luncheons, at least for me, a big part of why I attend is the networking. And we don't necessarily get that in this type of setting. So I appreciate you taking time out of your day to hear the update. And then the other reason, of course, that we attend the luncheons at the Arizona Inn is for the dessert. which I am missing, along with their wonderful coffee. So maybe when all this is over, we can all go enjoy some dessert and coffee at the Arizona Inn. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, can everyone see that? Great. Okay. And just kidding, it doesn't want to advance. Give me 1 second, sorry guys. There we go. Didn't want to advance this slide. So I want to take a few minutes and talk about who we are. I know for many of you, you're well versed in who we are, but I know there's some folks on the phone or on the computer today that may not be aware of who we are as an organization. We are the Regional Economic Development Organization serving Metro Tucson and Southern Arizona. We're a private nonprofit, and we're really industry driven. And what that means is that our board, who you will see on this magazine cover on the right, is really comprised of members of the business community, as well as other community leaders throughout Southern Arizona. They are the ones who fund us, so they contribute both financially and in their time in driving this organization forward. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands a little bit about who we are. We've now been around for 15 years as an organization. Previously, we were known as TRIO, Tucson Regional Economic Opportunities. And about 5 years ago, we changed our name to Sun Corridor Inc. to be more encompassing of all of Southern Arizona. Recently, I think, gosh, maybe 3 weeks ago now, 2-3 weeks ago, we did just name a new chair of our board. Judy Rich is the president and CEO of Tucson Medical Center. And I can't think of a time ever when it would be better to have someone from the healthcare industry leading your organization. Judy's been a long time member of our board and has been very involved. She has been integral with our relationship we forged about 1.5 years ago with the Tucson Airport Authority. So we're thrilled to have her as our new board chair. And we, like the changes here at AAED, that change happened after 3 years of having Dave Hutchins, who's the CEO of UNS Energy, which is the parent company for TEP, and Camila's boss, as our chair. And he did an extraordinary job of leading us through a really exciting time. And he probably got out just in time for all the fun to begin as we appear to be entering somewhat of a recession. Again, I just want to go through this very quickly. I often take for granted what people know and understand about the work that we do every day and what drives it. So I want to make sure that I'm clear on what we do as an organization in our slice of economic development. So at a high level, we are working to recruit new companies to Tucson and Southern Arizona. And we are working to retain companies that are here. Now that's specific. It's not just any and every company that we're going out and seeking to recruit here or to keep here. Of course, we want them all to stay and we want them all to go. But we're really looking at companies that are wealth generating primary employers. And that means that they import money and export product. So those primary jobs help create other jobs. They create indirect jobs in the construction and home building, legal services, realtors, things like that. And with that, that brings increased tax revenue, both at the state, county, and local jurisdiction level. So I just wanted to go through that real quickly to make sure it's clear where we focus our efforts as an organization. Our targeted industries haven't changed in a number of years. We did a strategic plan, gosh, I think it's been over 10 years ago, and then an update maybe 7 or 8 years ago. But these remain our targeted industries. Aerospace and defense, transportation, logistics, bioscience and healthcare, and mining and renewable technology, although we did call it natural resources technology. You might see that, you know, in some places elsewhere. That said, this is where we proactively focus our efforts and where we have assets to support these industries and think that we can readily compete to win this type of business. That said, if somebody knocks on our door and they ask for assistance, or they're evaluating Metro Tucson and Southern Arizona for a project and it doesn't fit in one of these categories, that doesn't mean that we're not going to help them. We're of course going to help them and answer their questions and make sure that they can make, you know, an informed location decision. But we do have limited resources. So when we proactively work on recruiting companies, our focus tends to be on these targeted industries. So something I want to go over just to be clear, as I go through some of the statistics and data, I want to talk about industries versus, I call it use type. It's really about the kind of real estate or the kind of use that's going to go in to a particular facility. I found myself explaining this to one of my newer colleagues. We were fortunate to hire someone in December, and as we've as many of you have, he is also learning economic development on the job. That's how many of us get our training. So we were talking about industries versus use type and what's the difference. So I went over the industries that we target, but when we target those industries, what they're doing or what the activity is that particular company, the type of facility that they're seeking varies. So as an example, company Too Simple, many of you are familiar with autonomous vehicle company. They're building software that goes in trucks, semi-trucks to transport goods autonomously. When they came to us, they were looking actually for an R&D flex facility, but the industry that they're in is transportation and logistics. So just to understand that difference. Caterpillar, I mean, think Caterpillar's in the mining industry, particularly their surface mining and technology division, which we were fortunate enough to land several years ago. So their industry is mining technology. The use type though, when they came to us, they were looking for office space. They weren't looking to necessarily manufacture those big pieces of equipment that we see in the mines. And lastly, Sargent Aerospace in Marana is an example. They're in the aerospace industry, and they certainly have some office space that they're building, but largely that's a manufacturing facility. So just wanted to drive home the difference between those two. I think it'll make sense when you see some of my later slides. So total jobs in the pipeline is 12,550. And I want to give you some context on what that means. First of all, the pipeline is a snapshot in time. The pipeline is, and I updated this yesterday, I don't think it's changed from yesterday to today, but the pipeline represents all of the open, active opportunities that we are working on in one way, shape, or form. It changes as new opportunities come into the pipeline, and then that number will go up. Conversely, as we learn that, you know, a project is not moving forward for whatever reason, and we close it out, then the opportunities go out of the pipeline and those jobs numbers come down. So 12,550, some context, that's quite a bit for us. We were about a year and a half ago hovering around 10,000 jobs in the pipeline. We did see a slight decrease to where we were averaging more around 8,000 or 9,000. It was a little bit surprised when I ran the numbers that they were that high. However, we do have a couple of large projects that we're competing for that have driven up those numbers. I don't know that that's going to be the future because what we hear is that if COVID-19, one of the things that COVID-19 will bring us is more automation, which says to me that we're going to see more opportunities with a higher capital investment and probably a lower job count. But, that we're still early in this, so that's, yet to be determined. Okay, so current pipeline highlights, which are what's going on right now, what are the opportunities? So we have 73 active opportunities in the pipeline. Again, over the last several years, that number has gone up as we have added resources, both human resources as well as investments in technology and other lead generation sources. About 34% of those projects right now are aerospace and defense. That's fairly typical for us. That's the #1 industry that we typically have in our pipeline. If you don't know, you should, that we are an aerospace and defense community. We have a lot of resources and assets that contribute to making that industry very strong in our community. And while Raytheon Missiles and Defense is obviously the anchor and the pillar of that aerospace and defense employment here, there are many, many other aerospace and defense companies that are, some of which are Raytheon suppliers, some of which are not. We also, and this is where I wanted to make the distinction between industry and use type, of our total pipeline, about 65% of that is manufacturing. Manufacturing has historically always been the largest proportion of our pipeline, manufacturing and I would say other industrial, but this is specifically manufacturing. So, and you'll see that that number has, I'll get ahead of myself a little bit, you'll see that that number has slightly increased over the last several months since COVID hit us. And lastly, the #1 US state location from where our opportunities come is California. So about 10% of our opportunities are coming out of California currently. That said, I would say that you hear all these things about why aren't all these companies, all these California companies should be moving to Arizona. And of course we think they should. However, there are a lot of reasons why they exist and operate in California. So we're trying to be really strategic about identifying those that make the most sense to target and try to recruit them to Arizona. Okay. Oops. All right. So I wanted to give you a sense of what things looked like pre-shutdown. So we started the year, I say started, we started and we're going through the year pretty strong. We were feeling very optimistic about our position, about the number of opportunities we were pursuing, and just our general level of activity that we were seeing. So what I'm giving you now, these are the opportunities that we added to that pipeline between July and mid-March, which is essentially almost the first 3 quarters of our fiscal year. We operate on a July to June fiscal year, as many of you do. What you'll notice here, July to mid-March, about just a little more than 20% of the opportunities we added to the pipeline were aerospace and defense. And I'm pointing this out for a later discussion point, only 1% of those opportunities were bioscience related. So not a lot of activity on bioscience. And then the rest is distributed across other targeted industries and some that aren't necessarily in those targeted industries. Like we had a fair amount, I want to say about 15% were consumer products manufacturing opportunities that came across our desk and that we competed for. Again, about 57% of those opportunities that were added to our pipeline between July and mid-March were manufacturing. So that's in line with the overall numbers for our pipeline. Okay, so post shutdown, and what I'm calling shutdown, for us in our organization, I remember very clearly the second week of March. I was with, I don't know everyone who's on today, but some of us were at the Site Selector Guild in Atlanta. I know Camila was there, among others, and kind of hard to believe now that on the 11th of March I was in Atlanta. And on the 13th of March, it started to become clear that things were changing, and I believe it was that was a Friday, and the following Monday is when I believe they closed schools. So that's what I'm calling shutdown. Our office closed at that time, and for us, you know, it's been an adventure ever since. So that's the shutdown into the present. So that's about a 4-month time period that a 4-month window that I'm looking at, a little bit into our new fiscal year. In that time period, we've added 27 new opportunities. I will tell you that from that kind of mid to late March through April, it was very slow in terms of new opportunities. We were just trying to get a handle on what was going on with our current opportunities, frankly. We were doing outreach to them to try to understand whether or not they were moving forward and what sort of time frame they might be moving forward. And at that moment, most of them still didn't know. They were worried about their existing operations and just, you know, like everyone, trying to figure out how to keep business moving in this new world that we were living in. But as April came to an end and we started May, things really started picking up to where, say we're back on pace to where we were, but we're close to it in terms of new opportunities. Of those, about 40% are aerospace and defense. If you remember, pre-shutdown, it was just a little over 20. So we are seeing a lot of aerospace and defense related activity. And the big one I'd like to point out is bioscience. I think we only had 1 opportunity in the first 9 months in bioscience, and we've had 4 in the last 4 months. One of which is very active, and I'm cautiously optimistic we'll move forward with a location in Metro Tucson. Again, manufacturing, that number just keeps going up in terms of the proportion of projects that are looking at manufacturing operations. I can tell you that generally office is, we're seeing very few office users that are actively looking at new opportunities. Those that we are working with, and I'll get to this, most of them are on hold and haven't given us a definitive timeline on when they might move forward. I suspect that many of them are evaluating what their needs are at this point. So again, post-shutdown, some of the opportunity highlights. As I mentioned, we were reaching out to all of those companies that were in or opportunities that were in our pipeline to try to assess what they plan to do, or if they even knew what they planned to do. 35% approximately of all the opportunities that we had in our pipeline as of mid-March were telling us that they were putting things on hold. That on hold period varied from 30 to 45 days, but almost all of those turned into a, 60 to 120 day hold. They've a lot of them have pushed out when they'll make a decision. Some of those, and this isn't, frankly, some of them we didn't get responses from right away. So we, have continued to reach out to them. Some were just trying to figure out what they were doing. But it's apparent that those that were looking or evaluated an office type use are pushing things out much further than those that were evaluating an industrial use like manufacturing, like a distribution center or some other industrial use. As far as overall opportunities, that's what we call projects, opportunities, that number, the number of opportunities that we added in that mid-March to mid-July, remember it was I think 27, that was down 43% from the prior 4 months. So we definitely saw a decrease. We had been very busy and many of you were involved in helping in that lead generation. So definitely saw a decrease. And then just year over year, so looking at the same time period last year from mid-March to mid-July, we saw a 20% decrease year over year. It's important because this work is somewhat cyclical. Things tend to, in my experience, slow down a little bit in the summer as folks are taking vacation and time off. You tend not to see quite as much activity, but the fact that year over year we're 20% down, definitely is an indication that, that not as many companies are making decisions for a variety of reasons, some of which, of course, many of which, of course, are COVID-19. But I'm also hearing from site selectors that part of that is that it's an election year. And we often see this in election years where companies kind of want to wait and see how things turn out before they move forward with any location decisions. So just a few opportunity highlights. These are some projects we're working on. Some of you are familiar with them. Some of you I've been bothering routinely with, can you help me get some information? So to those of you who've been willing to scramble and get that information, thank you. We know it's always a quick turnaround, but those details matter to the client and really help them make an informed decision about whether or not they move forward in our market. So Oasis is in one of those bioscience projects. The use type is manufacturing. I'm not sure if it's going to meet the state definition of manufacturing as it relates to incentives, but there is definitely a production component to what they're going to be doing. It's a small number of jobs, or at least, compared to what we like to see. We like jobs in the hundreds, right? Particularly with unemployment where it is. However, this is I think, kind of interesting. It's a 100,000 square foot facility that operates 24/7 and 24/7, 365, I should say. And they're going to have, they anticipate a maximum of 40 jobs created. So what that says to me is a lot of automation. And when you look at the capital investment of $40 million, and as I didn't put it on here, some of that's confidential, but as that breaks down in terms of equipment, there's a lot of money being invested in equipment, which again points to that automation. I'm more familiar with Oasis because it is my project. Maxwell, I'm not quite as familiar with, but know enough to be dangerous. And I'm going to pause now. I forgot to say this at the beginning. My colleague Daniela Gallagher was going to join us today, and unfortunately she was not able to be here. I know she would much rather be here than what she's doing. So I apologize for that, but this is actually her project, Project Maxwell in the aerospace industry. Again, it's manufacturing. This one is exciting with 300 jobs, definitely good. A little lower on the capital investment end, so probably a little more labor intensive in the type of work that they do. We're all, no deal is done until it's done, but we're all crossing our fingers that things will continue to move forward positively with Project Maxwell, and that within the next 60 days, 90 days, we'll be able to announce it, and you'll know who the client is. And we'll be able to celebrate new jobs. Again, Project Q is Daniela's project, another aerospace project, aerospace and defense industry project. Again, the use type on this one is manufacturing. I realized all the ones I've highlighted are manufacturing, but you see that nearly 70% of our pipeline is manufacturing. So it's not surprising that these are the ones that are the most, let's say, the most active. We've had the most activity, the most engagement from the client or the consultant, asking questions, visiting the market. In fact, these two projects that I'm featuring on this slide have both done site visits in the midst of this pandemic, which is a strong indication to us that they are very serious about their intent to move forward with a location. Hopefully that location is Tucson, Metro Tucson or Southern Arizona, but we'll see. So Project Q, like I said, aerospace manufacturing, 150 jobs. And I do know enough to know that these are, it is a manufacturing operation, but many of them are engineering type positions, very highly skilled and highly paid. And the investment on that is a little bit lower at $5 million. Project Anoram, I know they're looking at the state of Arizona as well as 5 other states, and we're working with the ACA on this. For those of you from the Metro Phoenix market, I know they're evaluating Metro Phoenix as well. At this point, I think we can all agree that we hope they just down select the state, which we anticipate that was supposed to happen over the summer. They've taken a bit of a pause to evaluate the workforce and actually hire a consultant to help them do that. And we anticipate that things are really going to pick back up on this one in the next 30 days, where they will decide what final 3 states they are going to evaluate for a new manufacturing facility. In this one, they are planning to build a 600,000 square foot facility that would employ up to 1,600 people over time, and obviously huge investment at $250 million. So we get plenty of bad news, right? And I kind of feel like in the economic development world, it's our job to try to share some good news where we can find it. Last week, I believe it was on Friday, was nice to have the Site Selectors Guild, who represents many of the top site selectors across the US and really globally. As an industry organization, they have been surveying their members to get feedback from them on what they're seeing from their clients and in their own pipelines. And as part of a recent survey, they named Tucson one of the top 10 mid-sized markets for new projects. From their view, and I would say that our activity level reflects this, there's a turn toward looking at mid-tier markets, partially because we don't have the kind of population density. Often we're a little bit more low cost than some of the large urban metro areas. So we hope that this recognition by the Site Selector Guild, it's great to get the recognition. We hope that that also leads to more opportunities that we have a chance to compete for. I put up the infograph that is on their website if you want to go check it out yourself, if you haven't already seen it. I thought, most interesting The top 2 industries with the most project activity, biotech and life sciences, which is also reflected by the increased activity we've seen in our pipeline, as well as, they call advanced manufacturing that can span across industries, but they're seeing a lot of manufacturing related activity as well. So, and you'll see on their list, most of those do not require an office type of use. Most of these are industrial related projects and activities. Another good news, all right, we got to keep it coming, right? So within the last, I think couple of months now it's been, we were recognized by Moody's Analytics as one of the top 10 US cities to best recover from COVID-19. And what they meant by recover was economically recover. I know that our numbers as it relates to COVID-19 as a state and has not been positive lately, but Moody's was looking at which cities are in the best position to come out of COVID-19, the effects of COVID-19 economically. Additionally, we were recognized as the top relocation destination for technical professionals. It's interesting that we got this recognition. I've heard this anecdotally from a couple folks, and I'm looking now at you, Camila. I've heard you share some anecdotes that you've known of technical professionals that have chosen to relocate to Tucson because of all the reasons that we've talked about, the lack of density, the cost of living, general lifestyle reasons, while maintaining their employment in another city. As people are able to work more virtually and as companies are allowing that, I think we'll see more of those folks here. That's going to be an interesting phenomenon for us to grapple with as a region. And this one's just kind of fun. It's I don't know that it's indicative of anything big, but at least from what I'm hearing from the folks in the residential housing market, it's very tight, which is reflected by this Tucson ranking as the #1 city for the largest spike in Google home searches. And I believe that occurred in April, if I'm not mistaken. It was April or May. So a lot of folks are looking at Tucson. We've got to believe that some of those people are coming in from outside the market to evaluate Tucson as a new home or a new location. I want to point to these specific tech rankings because I think they're really important for us as an organization. They garner a lot of national attention, which leads to us having an opportunity to compete for more projects. So last year, we were thrilled to be recognized by CBRE, international real estate company with lots of resources to do research and publish these wonderful reports. CBRE recognized Tucson in 2019 as the #1 up and coming tech talent market. That was great. It got us lots of earned media, lots of attention. People were, in a national level, were looking at, giving Tucson a second look. And that's really what we need. And then just again last week, along with that announcement from the Site Selectors Guild, we were once again named to the top 25 up and coming tech talent markets. While we weren't in the #1 slot, we were still in the top 25, which is really important to showing that and demonstrating that we do have the tech talent here to support companies that want to expand or relocate to Metro Tucson in Southern Arizona. It was interesting, prior to the CBRE ranking coming out, CBRE is very widely known, well-recognized, well-respected organization. We were recognized by this group called the Oliver Wyman Forum as one of the US fastest growing technology metropolises. And my colleague, who I think might be on here today, Laura Shaw, I remember we talked about it and was like, really? Is this, is this for real? And did some research, and it seemed like, that they had really done some rigorous research to come up with this designation. And then it was just a few months later that CBRE came out with the ranking. So this was kind of the, early indication that things were looking positive in terms of our national recognition for our tech talent. And then lastly, another recent ranking was that we are, and I think this one was in May, we're in the top 50 for tech salaries by business.org. So meaning that things, the individuals that choose to move here, whether they have a job here or not, could be elsewhere, that their salaries are going to take them farther. All right, I got a little happy there on the clicker. So what are we doing? What's next? We're trying to figure it out like everybody else, right? We're really thinking about how we do business differently, which is challenging in a world of sales and business development, which is based so much on relationships, personal interaction. How do you keep that? How do you maintain that? How do we keep some of this positive momentum that we have and positive national recognition for Tucson moving forward in spite of the challenges that we face today? So I'm going to highlight a few things. This certainly isn't all encompassing, but first I would point to a recovery and resilience plan that we are working on. That plan is being led by a steering committee, which is largely comprised of members of the chairman's circle of Sun Corridor Inc. That recovery and resilience plan will provide, we're gonna do a market analysis that evaluates the impacts of COVID-19 on the targeted industries. And we're going to look at things like supply chain and workforce and infrastructure and see where there are gaps, where there are very specific things that we can work on as a region to ensure that we remain competitive going forward. Second, we are working on a targeted national marketing campaign. And again, my colleague Laura Shaw and Sydney Chong are going to be heading this up. Tucson has a well-known, a well-established reputation as a great place to visit, and that's wonderful. That's a first step in garnering new business, is you've got to get people here so they can see how great it is, right? However, we definitely could benefit from wider exposure that recognizes Tucson as a business center. So Laura and her team are going to be working with a national PR firm, and they're going to assist us with that endeavor. So we're kind of early in that effort, and there will be more to come on that. Although it is a targeted national marketing campaign, so you probably won't see a lot locally. If we're doing it right, we're going to be targeting very specific individuals in markets outside of Arizona. The next one, I call this personalized outreach to site selectors and others outside our market that provide lead generation. We have focused for many years on developing relationships with site selectors who help companies make key location decisions. In fact, we hosted their annual event here in 2017, and many of you participated. A number of you have participated in their annual conference and have worked to build relationships with them as well. That is a group effort. I think it's what helped lead to that recognition that we recently got by the Guild as one of the top 10 markets. And so we've really been struggling with how are we going to keep those relationships. We've done that largely by going to these Guild events, their forums, their conferences, but also going to the markets in which they live and work and meeting with them on their turf, if you will. We do a lot of outbound sales trips. Some of you have been involved in those sales trips where we go and meet with those folks and we really tell the Tucson story. So we are really working to determine how do we do that in this virtual world. And we really feel like that personalized outreach, understanding what their focus is as a professional, what sort of industries they want to know more about, and that represent their clients and can help them do their job better. That's what we're focusing on. So we are going to be having, and we actually have had several virtual meetings with them, and really focus on sharing hyper-local data that they can't get anywhere else. They subscribe and pay for wonderful data sets and wonderful data sources, but there are things that we can share with them that aren't in those data, those databases that they pay for. And that's really going to be our focus with site selectors until, things settle down and we're able to do some of that traveling again. And fourth, I think all of us are doing this. We're probably using technology, whether it's willingly or unwillingly, we're sort of being forced to do that. We're really trying to embrace that and be targeted in our efforts of using both data and technology across both our business development team and our marketing team, so that we invest in things that help do our job better. So as an example, we've invested in a software that provides us information on potential lead sources. It's very targeted, as well as some tools that are very targeted in our marketing team that's going to help them in being really specific with messaging to an audience that's important for us to reach. And last, physical, not social distancing. As I said, this is a business of relationships. Anytime you're in business, I don't care what you do, if you're in business development and sales, relationships are critical. And it's been challenging to not be able to do things like go to the AAED luncheon and talk to people and catch up and find out what's going on, and be able to garner things that are difficult to get in this type of setting. That said, I think it's incumbent on all of us to reach out even more and to make those connections. And so this physical, not social distancing really is a thread through everything that we're trying to do. And we're trying to do lots of Zoom meetings and pick up the phone. As someone said the other day, I think he's on here, we're gonna talk the old-fashioned way on the phone. That's important too. All of it is important in ensuring that we don't become too distant from one another. While we may have to physically do that, we need to make sure that we're maintaining those relationships. And that's all I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you so much, Susan. That was very informative. I particularly like your last point about just because we're physically distant doesn't mean that we have to be socially distant. So it's a great little reminder that there are ways that we can continue to touch base with each other and conduct our business the way that we have, just a little bit differently. We do have one question. They're curious about what software platform you are using for lead generation or information. If you feel comfortable sharing that, that's fine. Otherwise, we can.
Sure. Yeah. So we're using a tool called Lead Feeder that provides us information about specific parts of our website that are getting activity, where we're seeing activity. And we are also, we've been investing in a company that helps with lead generation, very specific lead generation in the targeted industries in where we have strengths. So that company is GSLI, and then Lead Feeder is the technology platform that helps us understand not just who's generally looking, but who is seeking out information in the areas that someone interested in opening a business in Tucson, where they would look.
Thank you.
Hey, Susan, I was curious. So of course, AED has been very, impactful in your experience and your work. But I was curious what other organizations that you belong to have been, sort of equally or also impactful in what you do.
So currently, I got to think about this. The other organization that I'm most involved with is CREW, Commercial Real Estate Women. I've mainly for the networking reasons and attending meetings. I know that we have a great CREW chapter here. I know there's also one in the Metro Phoenix area as well. And right now, I gotta say those are the main two that, AED and CREW are the ones I'm most involved with at this point. Frankly, I don't feel like I have time for many others. It's been a good problem. We've been quite busy responding to inquiries, so I'll take it, right?
We do have another question here, and they're asking, what industries should we prepare the upcoming workforce for, knowing that there's a lot of automation and remote work in the foreseeable future?
So I would think about that. I'm going to get the acronym wrong, probably. If any of our friends, I'm not sure if anybody from Pima Community College is on today, but I hear Chancellor Lambert and others on his team, Ian Rourke, talk about ACEs. And if anybody wants to help me out, that'd be great. I know it's a not autonomous, connected, can't remember the E and the S, I'm sorry, off the top of my head. But I think what the purpose of ACEs is that it's all about the integration of technology and the ability to be flexible and change. So, I'm not an expert in workforce development. I certainly try to know and understand what we're doing as a community and make sure that's connected to economic development. But I think that preparing our workforce to be ready for technology and to be comfortable with all sorts of technology platforms, as well as to be adaptable and flexible for change. If there's one thing that we should all know and be aware of, if we weren't before, is that you have to be ready to adapt and change on a moment's notice, and that fighting it is not going to benefit you in the long run. I think we all learned very quickly that things we thought we could never do are being done. I would venture to guess that many of you who are working from home probably never thought your employer would require you to do so for such an extended period of time. So I think just really focusing on understanding technology, learning about various technology platforms, as well as being adaptable are the two of the key factors. I'm sure among others.
One of the things that I do hear Chancellor Lee and Ian Rourke talk about is the identification of pathways that are transferable along different professions. And so it's not just about finding one highway and sticking on it, it's about finding a skill set that is necessary to transfer across different industries. And I think that Pima Community College has done a really good job at that. Well,
thank you, Krista. Autonomous, connected, electric, and shared. Thank you. I couldn't remember it. Thanks.
Thank you, Krista, very much. We do have one more question. How can we as an industry or as existing local businesses best support Sun Corridor? Thank you, Jamie, for that question.
Yes, thanks for that question. I mean, there are a number of ways that you can be supportive. I think those of us that work in and around economic development, it's our job to tell the Tucson, Metro Tucson and Southern Arizona story, both inside our market and inside the state as well as outside of the state. So we really are ambassadors, and we are, I think we're responsible for making sure that it's like some of the things that I shared today, that we are getting that messaging out there, and that we are asking our friends and family and acquaintances to also carry that message. It certainly will help us in building that brand reputation as a business center for the region. I think the other thing is, particularly for a lot of the folks that are on the call, is when we do ask for your help in terms of information or data, just being responsive to that. And I would, there's a couple folks I saw here I know that have been tremendously helpful. And I've got to point to Camila being one of them. We've had a number of projects that have needed, detailed information in a short period of time, and I really appreciate everyone who has turned that around quickly. So those are two things that I think that you can do to help support not just Sun Corridor, but really the region, really Metro Tucson and Southern Arizona.
Yeah, that is definitely something that we can do to help each other, even as we go and find our own leads and bring in everybody to really put the region's best foot forward. So I always do appreciate Sun Corridor's inclusive approach to that. Well, that brings us to the end of our time. Thank you so much, Susan. We really appreciate it. That was great information. Thanks again to our sponsors, EEC, Barker, and Marana. And again, we have another virtual coffee hour, which will be September 23rd, and that will be with Kathy Prather, and we'll cover JTED in their new building and different programmings. Again, kind of linking it together to the workforce development aspect of economic development. So thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day. Stay cool, wear masks. Thank you.
Thank you.